Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You see, for once, it's my turn to say, how's my audio?
Indeed. Actually, I'm not using the Yeti right now. Maybe I should plug it in, or is this okay? I remember the meeting rooms in Sibos. They're like small saunas with no air.
Yeah, that's what this booth is like, this IBM booth. Let me go and find a technician that can turn this off.
Yep.
Am I hosting you or are you hosting me?
I mean, you hosted last time, right?
I can't remember. Sibos has just mushed my brain, so I can't
No, because I did the joke, right? So you were hosting last time. So, all right. So, Paul, are we good to go?
Absolutely.
So here we go.
Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Pål Krogdahl and Ville Sontu. This is Fintech Daydreaming.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Fintech Daydreaming, our dear listeners. This time around, we're going to have something a bit different for you. As many of you know, we are in the middle of the conference season right now. It is the time when we have a million conferences, big, small, medium size, and we, of course, being in the fintech space, are no exceptions in terms of needing to be present in these conferences. We enjoy it a lot, and we're not complaining. It's just that it makes our schedules quite tight. So again, like I said, it's going to be a bit of a different episode because my dear co-host, Pål Krogdahl, is in Sibos in Amsterdam for this week. And we decided that because Sibos is one of these larger and most well-known banking events globally, maybe it would be a fun thing to do a bit of a recap on what happened during Sibos week and see if we can pick up some interesting topics, perhaps for future episodes. So this time it's going to be just the two of us. Paul, are you okay with that?
I'm perfectly okay with that. Yes, it's sometimes nice just to have a chat between you and me. I don't know if the listeners find it as exciting as we do, but I think it's going to be nice. It's going to be good. And for once, I'm the one traveling. So I need to apologize to everybody if we have technical problems, if the sound is bad. I'm here at the IBM booth at Sibos. In the meeting room, and as you mentioned before, Villa, I mean, these meeting rooms tend to turn into saunas, and we had to turn the fan off so that it didn't affect my my audio. So if there's sweat running down my face by the end of this episode, then I apologize, but it's all worth it.
Yeah, I do remember that. I wonder because it's been the same for like, I don't know, a decade in Sibos. All the booth meeting rooms, I mean, are complete disasters in terms of air conditioning. So yeah, but yeah, you're right. I'm not traveling this time around. I'm here in my home base in Espoo, Finland. But that being said, I am actually getting on a plane in a couple of hours. I'm actually flying to LA, and for those looking, I have an LA themed T-shirt on me as well, because. I'm gonna actually be flying into another event, which is happening next week for my current employer, and looking forward to meeting a lot of our North American customers and colleagues, of course, during my trip to California. But enough about me. I think we established that we're both quite busy right now, and the focus of this episode, of course, is Sibos. Sibos actually happens to be one of my favorite conferences around the world. I did attend that practically every time I could when I was still working at the bank, and it's the very bank-driven conference. But before we get to all of that good stuff on Sibos, we of course have to honor our tradition of doing a joke, and as I tend to do it, I do it here in the beginning of the episode, and even though Paul has turned on me and does it towards the end of the episode, but we're going to keep on with the old tradition of doing it here in the beginning when I'm hosting. So Paul, since you are the guest today, so do you have a joke for our listeners?
It feels really strange to be a guest on my own show, right? but there we go. Yes. I do have a joke. I thought initially my joke was going to be Sibos, the conference where bankers go to party, but I realized that maybe isn't such a good joke. And
that's not a joke; it's the truth.
Yes, it's the truth. But no, so no, here's a joke, a techie joke, a bit fintechy, a bit, but so the joke goes like this. I asked Alexa the other day to check my bank balance and see what great new Apple products I could afford to buy, because we all like buying new Apple products. And Alexa replied with apple juice.
Oh no. Does it work so that the less guests we have or less people we have on the podcast, the worse the joke is? Okay, but anyway,
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, I think that is keeping up with the theme of jokes we have on the podcast here. So good job, Paul. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Good, but you already touched on Sibos a little bit. So it's this fun place for bankers to go to party for a week. This time in Amsterdam, of course, and it's been organized every year in a bit of a different place around the world. Mm-hmm. But for our listeners who might not know what Sibos actually is, should we briefly recap what is Sibos and why is Sibos so big and important? Since Paul, you're there, maybe you can take a stab at trying to explain Sibos a little bit.
I can do, and I agree with you. Sibos has always been my highlight as well during the different conferences each year, and I've tried to attend Sibos as much as possible. Sibos has been going for quite some time, right? And started off being focused purely on payments. It's a conference run by Swift, so being a Swift conference, obviously it's focused on payments. But one of the things that I've noticed more and more as the years have gone on, and very much this year, it is no longer just a payments conference. It is a banking conference. It's a large banking conference. Most of the banks are attending. A lot of the large technology companies, ISVs, I'm here because of my role around ISVs. So meeting with all the ISVs here. It has grown into a industry conference, and I would say the premier industry conference for banking and financial markets. It runs once a year. One of the things that I think Sibos does quite well is that they cycle around the world. So next year it's going to be in Toronto, I believe, and then they'll go to Asia Pacific. They very often do it in Singapore, if I remember correctly, and then they come back to Europe. So if travel is an issue, then every third Sibos should end up being somewhere near to you. But for some of us, the pleasure of traveling halfway across the world is actually quite good as well, right? So, but yeah, that is Sibos. And like you said, I think you attended quite a lot as well when you were part of the working for Nordea.
Yeah, and even before that. But just a quick side note there. You mentioned ISVs. So what is an ISV?
An ISV is an independent software vendor. And if we look at banking currently and banking in the future, I mean, everybody knows I have an ethos, a mantra, a statement. The future of banking will be dominated by platforms. And with that, banks need to align to a future architecture that allows them to engage in an ecosystem of partners. And one of the main problems, as we all know, is the fact that banks over the last, 10 years or so have focused very much on putting digital capabilities on their front end, on their digital channels, and leaving their core systems to stagnate. And in that stagnation created a chasm between all of their digital capable front ends and their legacy back-end systems, which today are still, to a large degree, still manual. And that means, being able to deliver on this just in time, user experiences and everything else become very, very difficult when you suddenly have manual processes in the back end and old COBOL system. We've spoken about this so much around third generation core banking platforms. We've had guests on the show like Thought Machine, etc. So that's nothing new. But the banks are also ending up in a situation where I would say there is no true return on investment in developing everything yourself, right? It takes too long. You have to maintain it. You have to have the capabilities and skills in-house. Banks should be focusing on being banks. Yes, there are certain things that they are have as a competitive advantage that they maybe want to continue to maintain and develop in-house. But generally, to do banking, it is easier to rely on third parties that are software companies that spend their waking hours developing their solutions. Like I said, Thought Machine is a good example. Everybody knows about Temenos and Finastra and FIS, and the list goes on and on and on. And that's where banks are heading towards. They, rather than rebuilding a core banking platform, they'll buy or even subscribe and consume to a new platform that they will do a progressive modernization towards. And the ISVs are the providers of that. So sitting in my role at IBM, I look after the ISV ecosystem for the core banking and payments practice in IBM, which means that my role is focused around these Thought Machines and Sumtex and Zafins, and I've been talking to a lot of them here this week at Sibos and doing sound bites, put them up on LinkedIn, just to share what they are doing and how we are working with them. So it's been an interesting time here at Sibos for me, because I've not actually attended any of the large sessions, the plenary sessions. I've been having back-to-back meetings all the time. We talked about these small booths here at Sibos and going from sauna to sauna. It's been a hot time for me. I've been drinking an awful lot of water to stay hydrated, but I've had some fantastically good meetings, and there's some interesting underlying trends happening here at Sibos, which I think is going to impact the banks and the ecosystem around the banks going forwards.
Have you noticed the miracle that happens with these meetings towards the evenings? Water turns to wine magically. So anyway, so that's if that's what you're interested in, that's definitely also what you can do in Sibos. But just as an observation from my experience in Sibos is that even though there is this vendors and banks being in the same space and in the same conference, it is a bit of this like speed dating. So you get a lot of meetings done between the potential buyers of technology, the vendors and the service providers, of course, in this conference. But I do have this feeling that Sibos is a little bit different compared to many of these, let's say, more commercial, even more commercial conferences, because there are more banks, because the banks come there and also the banks talk together. That was at least my perception. My major takeaways from my Sibos experiences working for a bank was that it was really nice to have all the peers from other banks from around the world and compare notes together without any this kind of dynamic where you feel like the other party is selling you something and you need to be buying something. I felt that Sibos felt like this, at least for parts, felt like a safe environment to share notes and compare thoughts and get all these perspectives from licensed institutions from around the world. And benefit on both sides on those conversations. I mean, your perspective working for a service provider, of course, is a bit of a different one. But I'm sure you can get value from this dynamic and having all these banks present as well in the conference, right?
Absolutely, and I think it goes back to what you were saying. It goes back to the fact that it still is a SWIFT conference. It's still focused on payments. So in reality, I mean, the main attendees here from the banks are from transaction banking. And to a certain degree, it's the banks selling to the banks, right? And that dynamic does come out. But again, as the conference has moved more and more into an industry conference, it is, just like you said, a fantastic dynamic between the banks, the service providers, all of us in a fantastic melting pot. And some of the meetings here are very, very good, very interesting. I, for one, have met an awful lot of old friends. I mean, I bumped into AL, Mr. Open Banking himself, who we had on a show here recently, right? So there's a lot of our friends here. Dave Birch is here as well. Unfortunately I missed his session, but I would have loved to have gone and listened to him. So I'm still running around, hoping I can still bump into him and shake his hand. But there is a lot here, a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of close on the topic of how it is structured. So as far as I remember, and watching the evolution of Sibos throughout the years, is that first it was basically one conference stream or seminar stream and presentations, the usual things you would expect from a banking conference, and then there was the exhibition floor where all the networking was happening. But lately, over the past, I think 6-7 years, maybe, they've also had this track called InnoTribe, and they bring in new ideas from Horizon 2 and 3, 5, 6 years out type of ideas. I remember for the first time when blockchain became a topic, when Vitalik Buterin was on stage talking about Ethereum, and everybody started running around with their hair on fire, basically, as trying to figure out what Ethereum is and why is it. And now, today in 2022, of course, it's a household name in terms of at least conversations, and everybody pretty much understands what it does and what it doesn't do. But this InnoTribe thing, the last time I went to Sibos, seems to be more and more mainstream. So I mean, I think for the main conference streams, I'm seeing more and more digital, more and more topics related to things that are in the horizon rather than the current topics. So rather than talking about the treasury and liquidity topics on stage, it's more about how do we enable things in the digital way in the modern world. So I think, have you seen this as well this year? So the mainstream stuff is now digital stuff. Is that still true?
I'm absolutely seeing a couple of underlying themes to Sibos this year, which, as you're saying, is looking at a wider scope and yes, digital capabilities. I would say that sort of three main trends that I'm seeing here this year. Everything is about sustainability. Everybody's talking about sustainability. It's been, if I'm honest, it's been around climate to date when we talk about sustainability, and that's starting to shift now. So it's not just about climate anymore, it's about that whole ethos of sustainability. How are we going to manage that? And one of the interesting discussions that's sort of coming into this is how can the fintech community come with technology to help around this space? Because so far, a lot of if you look at sustainability, particularly when you look at sustainability from a lending perspective, the banks want to prove that they're sustainable. There are fintechs that are starting to say that they've got technology, because a lot of this is around analytics, etc. Right? So there are fintechs that are starting to come out with capabilities that can say, we can help you analyze your data to show whether you are sustainable, to help you with your reporting, etc. But the banks at the same time are saying, there is no way we are going to share our client data out to third parties. But the fintechs are saying, but there's no way we're going to share our algorithms into the banks, because the algorithms is what they're earning their money on. That's what makes them unique and special. So this dichotomy that we need to solve, where we know it's going to be on the cloud, we know everything's going to be on the cloud, but at the same time, how are the banks going to be able to utilize the algorithms, and how are the algorithms going to be able to utilize the data without the data? This is actually not a new problem. We've had these sort of problems in the past. It just seems to be an old problem on a new subject. We'll fix it. I know it's going to be around encryption and everything else, but that's one of the underlying themes and discussions that I'm seeing a lot of here. The other one that's coming up everywhere is obviously everybody's talking about metaverse. Going back to what you said about, when blockchain came out, the hype was blockchain. Now the hype is metaverse and Web3, and everybody's talking about it. And it's on the horizon, if we're honest about it. Metaverse is not going to be revolutionary, groundbreaking this year or even next year. We're looking at a long-term horizon. So that's been a lot as well. And I believe that Dave Birch actually was on a discussion here around metaverse, but as usual, more around identity and identity management and digital identity in this case. But one of the things that I've also found quite interesting is blockchain is still a subject and a discussion that keeps coming up. And it's possible because there is this connection that says, oh, well, metaverse, it has to be blockchain. You can't have metaverse without blockchain. And how are you going to deal with your digital currencies and everything else? So blockchain still keeps coming up, still bubbling up, but not so much in a hyped way as it has been in the past, but it's still a key discussion point. So I would say those are the three underlying themes here: sustainability, 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 metaverse, and then blockchain still there.
All right. So I'm just recalling all the episodes we've done with Fintech Daydreaming in the past year or so, and I think we've covered all of those topics quite comprehensively. I guess the only one missing from that list is the embedded finance or embedded banking stream, which we've been running quite exhaustively over the past even 6 months now, from different angles. But yeah, so picking those apart a little bit. I mean, I remember we had an episode with Chris Skinner a while back, and he just had written a book which touched on the topic of sustainability and the overall ethics of how banks are approaching this topic. And it is quite easy to be quite cynical with the intents of the banks and how real they really are in becoming more sustainable from all the angles, not only from the environmental space as well. But this cynicism is easy to then use to brush off all the efforts that banks are doing in this space. So, they're using carbon credits, and we all know carbon credits are mostly just a very problematic ecosystem with a lot of fraud in it, and that the banks are doing greenwashing on certain things. And while that is probably true for many banks, but not all, I think. So my question from Sibos is that, have you seen something that convinced you that somebody is doing something really well in the sustainability space? Or is it still just more of this conceptual discussion about things they should be doing?
So like I said, I think even when we look at carbon footprint and everything else, that's about... It's like I said, it's about forgotten the word now, but the environment, environmental elements. But the discussion now around sustainability is moving further away from that. It's no longer just about what happens if this farmer field floods and all that sort of stuff. But yes, we are still in the discussion points. I still think there's an awful lot that has to happen. There's a lot of technology that we need to embed into this. And you're absolutely right. Greenwashing is happening, but we're heading in the right direction. But I think still some stuff to do. And am I seeing anything here at Sibos that's standing out as a fantastic example? I've not seen it. But I think it's a general understanding across the board that it's no longer just about saying, here's our carbon neutrality. There has to be more to it.
That's right. And maybe Sibos is not the place to find those standouts either. It's more about creating this conversation about the things that will be happening. So like we established in the beginning, now digital is mainstream on the conference streams and on the conversations. And now the sustainability angles, the ethical ways of handling financial services is becoming mainstream gradually as well. And so that will lead into results almost automatically in these institutions. I think it's a good thing to have on top of the agenda for banks and everybody, I suppose.
Absolutely, yes.
And the second topic, metaverse, and this has been a favorite of ours over the past episodes here, even in our podcast. And metaverse seems to be what everybody is talking about. And we've at least I have, in the conversations that I've had in many of these conferences and even on stage at just a couple of weeks ago, is that there is no proper definition of a metaverse. So there's or Web3 indeed either. So it's easy to have or subscribe basically any new idea into this is the metaverse thing. Yeah. Now, I'm gonna kind of ask the same question about the metaverse. So did you see anything in Sibos that stood out as a new idea or new way of thinking about the metaverse? And while you think about the answer to that, I also have to bring up that this week, or just a couple of days ago at least, Facebook just announced, or Meta just announced the partnership with Microsoft on the when they were launching the the new Quest Pro headset. And they were talking about all this stuff about having all the Microsoft Office applications or enterprise applications available on the metaverse through this almost like a mixed reality setup, where you could basically use, for example, use like a physical keyboard, but then you would have virtual monitors in front of you, and you could have your Windows desktop in the metaverse in this kind of gigantic screen instead of watching an actual monitor, and all of these things. So again, question coming back to Sibos there. Has this metaverse, these new announcements by Microsoft and Meta, perhaps have they been brought up there? Is any of the banks doing something more interesting than branches in Decentraland, for example? What have you seen?
Same. It is just same. Microsoft, I hear they've got a big booth. Yes, they've got, you know, Oculus virtual glasses and everything else, and you can play. I haven't. I have to be very honest. The minute I put one of those things on, my motion sickness come, and I think I'm going to throw up. So maybe I need to reprogram my brain for surviving the metaverse when it comes. But so I've not given that a lot of thought and attention. But what I am seeing is an awful lot of the GSIs are coming out with points of view now. Right. There was a big announcement. EY now has got a presence in metaverse. All of them are coming out with points of view. The banks are continuing to compete with each other as to who's got the best presence and who's in what metaverse and those sort of things. I'm not seeing anything groundbreaking though, right? I don't think, even here at Sibos, I've seen anything which is changing the paradigm. So I think back to what I said, metaverse is an underlying theme here. You're hearing it everywhere, but it's based on the same old theories. We haven't yet hit that nirvana moment where new models are coming out and new definitions of what metaverse really will be. So I haven't seen anything here that I would say, wow, that has opened my eyes. Now I've been reborn to a metaverse. No.
Yeah, it does seem to be a big topic. Even the blog post that I read from different people there in Sibos, and everybody seems to be saying that everybody's talking about the metaverse, and indeed the identity angle you mentioned, especially talked about by Church many times, is an interesting way of approaching it, because if you are able to solve digital identity in the metaverse, then things will start to flow. You will start to have a connection to the real world, or the meatverse from the metaverse as soon as you're able to have strong identity ties into these digital worlds. And
I actually think when we talk about digital identity, yes, we need to solve that in the metaverse and the future we're going to, but I actually think we still have a long way to go in solving digital identity and the hybrid between online, offline. I mean, you know, the fiascos I've been having with a Nordic bank to be able to reprove my identity. We shouldn't be having those problems in this day and age. So I still think we need to solve the identity issues we've got today before we should be solving our identity issues for the future of the metaverse. But that's just my perspective.
Yeah, that is true. And I've been actually playing with some of the Web3 stuff lately, and I do find it very compelling that you have this ubiquitous wallet application in either your browser or your mobile phone, and then you can just basically bring it up when you need to prove something about yourself. In the case of Web3 in its current state, it's basically proving the ownership of an NFT, for example. But maybe the future will be that we will prove some identity pieces of that. Just 1 second, actually, it is a funny coincidence. My Siri just picked up my noise and started playing some music. So I'm going to pause that music. So just one second.
Yeah, and I just had, in the room next to me here, something fell down and scared the living daylights out of me. Well, there we go. Did you manage to pause it?
Just 1 second.
So there you go. Dear listeners and guests, it proves yet again that Fintech Daydreaming is unedited. We take every situation as it comes and we share it with you. We try to be laid back and happy on every episode.
Yeah, I have no idea what triggered Siri there, but I think this will go into the like top 10 bloopers that we've had on the podcast so far. Luckily, it was just the two of us, but it was good.
Yeah.
So coming back to the point on the wallets and you proving things about yourself using these applications, I can certainly see the appeal. But again, there's a lot of work to be done to actually link real things instead of just hashes about the of JPEGs into the wallet. There needs to be something more there. So we will keep our eyes on that and hopefully bring some of these expert views into the podcast as well in form of guests. But we need to round up the list, right? All right. So let's get to the last one, which you mentioned, which is that blockchain is becoming like a usual average thing that you just talk about, and it doesn't seem to be going away. This is a bit surprising. I mean, considering the amount of negativity around, especially enterprise blockchain that we've seen lately, or at least for the last couple of years. Now that we're the permissionless or the crypto side of the blockchain conversation is in a bear market. At the same time, it feels like the enterprise blockchain is also getting its share of bad press and lately. But you're saying that in the background, it's basically still being a thing that is being used and developed just behind the scenes. There's no big noise about it, but it seems to be a part of the tech stack that is being built for these future services. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so the underlying theme here at Sibos is the fact that blockchain is still a discussion point. But absolutely, you're correct. I think the discussion has moved away from the hullabaloo of cryptocurrencies and digital assets and more towards the underlying infrastructure of Web3 and Metaverse. People seem to struggle to discuss and talk about Metaverse and Web3 without making some analogy or connection to blockchain, which brings the discussion of blockchain back up again. Right, so R3 are here. Obviously, with R3 being here, there is discussions around blockchain. There's been some announcements here this week around blockchain partnerships by some of the banks, trying to make a big announcement at Sibos. And obviously, with the merge that happened quite recently, those discussions are still ongoing, right?
Yeah. R3 certainly has been around, and we had Richard Gendel Brown as a guest. It was already like more than a year ago, I think, to talk about what R3 is doing, especially in the confidential computing space. And I'm following them with fascination, and of course they are there at Sibos as well. So we will continue to follow the blockchain / distributed ledger technology conversation as things are moving forward. One of my daily topics is the maybe not as much on the metaverse side of using blockchain, but the central bank digital currencies. The central bank digital currencies, another hot topic in many of the conferences that we're attending. There seems to be a kind of almost like a connection that cannot be broken in people's minds between blockchain DLT tokens and central bank digital currencies. So even though that might not be ultimately true in the way these systems will be designed in the future, it's still a topic that needs to be addressed by each and every design decision and proposal that is made by central banks. So it will remain a topic, and I think it's good. I mean, over the years, people are getting a very sober view into what these things do and cannot do. A lot of the as always with the technology hype in the beginning, it's a lot about attributing things that are not really true to a certain technology, or maybe just hopeful thinking on the technology. But as years go by and things are being tested, the truth comes out in terms of what can it really do. And seems like blockchain is having some staying power in this conversation. So there is some value there for sure. We're still waiting for that big moment of a mainstream application using blockchain globally becoming reality. We have some national solutions like the digital housing trade network in Finland, which is a very successful DLT project, and other ones as well in different parts of the world. But I think this global blockchain revolution hasn't materialized, at least not yet, but maybe it will be gradual.
I agree. And I'm afraid to say, Villa, I think we're running out of time. This meeting booth that I've got here, there's going to be a client meeting coming in very soon. Ooh. And I think I need to be able to turn the fan back on again so they don't come into a sauna. So,
there we go.
I think we need to close out the episode.
Yeah. Before we do that, however, I do need to ask about the parties. I know that Sibos is the place where a lot of the bankers go and relax a little bit, especially towards the evenings, like we established there in the beginning. So, what's been your favorite party experience or evening activity experience so far during this week?
That's actually a hard one. I don't think I can say I've had a favorite one because they've all been different. So ourselves, IBM, we hosted a drinks reception on Sunday night just before Sibos kicked off at the Straat Museum here in Amsterdam, and it was mind-blowing. I mean, it's street art, so it's graffiti and stuff like that, but huge, fantastic paintings and artwork, which honestly blew my mind. I would have loved to have bought them all, but I don't even have a house big enough to put them all up. So that was very nice, and that's where I actually met Mr. Open Banking. So that was good. I also went to an event hosted by Thought Machine, which was very pleasant and nice. And then episode 6. I mean, we've had episode 6 on as a guest as well, Ian Kerr. Mm-hmm. They hosted a fantastically interesting little reception at an Irish pub down in the center of Amsterdam, where in a back room, Irish feel, it brought me back to old days in small pubs in London with Guinness and finger food. So I don't think I could say one has been better than the other. And like all of them, it's always nice to have a drink and relax, but it's even more special to meet people and have discussions with them and socialize and network, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to miss Sibos again. I remember last time I was there in London, you need to make an itinerary in the beginning of the week. So, okay, I can be 30 minutes in this reception and 1 hour in this reception, and then I'll be home. I'll be back at the hotel at this time, and getting all that kind of schedules done for the evening activities was an interesting thing, because obviously you fill your days with meetings and all the business stuff, but it's in Sibos you also have to figure out the evening activities in a completely different scale than usual. But hey, like you said, we're running out of time, and time really goes fast when you're reminiscing about Sibos conferences. So it's been a fun talk. Hopefully you, dear listeners, didn't get too much bored here as well, as we're kind of walking down the memory lane and experiences from Sibos, even from this year. So I hope you found this insightful and you get inspired by this renewed conference season now after all the lockdowns. But time to wrap it up for today. I'm not going to ask Paul to tell how to reach out, because everybody knows how to find Paul and myself. You can find us from Fintech Daydreaming in all the channels, as you can imagine. And again, as usual, we only have one request to you, dear listeners, and that is just to like, subscribe, and please leave a review and comment on the podcast episodes that we put out there for your listening pleasure. So that's the way we get more people to join us in the community, that whereas the small community of Fintech Daydreaming listeners that we're building here, and it is really helps us to keep us going as we again are completely independent and we have no sponsors for this podcast. So no ads for you. Let's keep it that way, and keep on liking and subscribing. Thank you, everybody. Paul, any final words before we close?
No.
All right.
Not whatsoever. Join us again in 2 weeks' time.
It's a wrap. This has been Fintech Daydreaming.
This is Fintech Daydreaming.